I'm Todd Tucker from AgriNET out of Walla Walla, Washington, and today we're going to talk about budget lines. Budget lines can be used to set a range where you want to try to keep your soil moisture so that your plants are always happy. We're going to look here at a graph. This is a stack graph. For those of you who saw the percolation presentation, you'll kind of understand what's going on here. We're showing all the way back to the beginning of 2026. You can see mostly in the winter here we just have rains and a little percolation, but not any real water use. We see going in here into April, we start to see some of these lines take steeper angles down, means they are using water there. You can see the first irrigation looks like it was here on May 5th, and then another irrigation occurred on 6 days later on the 11th. You can see here we've got root uptake where you see the lines get steeper. Let's just shut off all the lines but the 20-inch line, and you can see that this is where we've got root uptake, where you see the stair stepping down at a steep angle. Here, very severe root uptake right during that period. A little there, more there, more there. It's kind of getting more regular, we see. This was a big draw against the water that was available. This is kind of what we want to see for healthy root uptake. So to get to the point where we can build a summed graph with budget lines, that's the next graph below the stack. So we'll move down here. And so this line just represents all of the depths being added together divided by the number of sensors. So as typical here, we have a 2-foot probe. There are 6 sensors, so it's adding all those moisture percentages up, dividing them by 6, so we get one single line representing the whole 2 feet is the idea here. So with this, we can set up budget line. The first thing we need to know, though, is how does this thing look in the field? How's the foliar health? Is it good? In this case, I've heard it is, and I expect it to be, just looking at the graph and seeing the natural irrigation curves and how they're holding pretty steady, not building or declining too quickly. We've got pretty much a full refill situation going on here. So where do you put your budget lines? Well, if everything has been healthy and good, we can go to the lowest point of the season so far, which is 23.6, and we'll use that as our bottom. How do we edit budget lines? We go to this gear wrench button here on the bottom. It brings up the units. We want to make sure we're on the right unit. French is the one we were looking at, so it gets highlighted in yellow. So we're going to, again, we can look here and we can go to the lowest point. It was 23.6, let's say. Put that in as the bottom, update that, and then we want to call that the refill. Update that. Now we have our baseline. We really don't want to go much lower then. So now we need to add in a top line, and for that I typically would go, we see the spikes that go up much higher. I'd kind of get to the top edge of the spike. See around 35 here, or maybe even a little lower. Let's say 34 would be good. These are all adjustable later, so let's put that in at 34. See what that looks like, and then we'll call that full. So that looks pretty good. That's a pretty good start to this. Let's go back and look at our graph, what it would look like there. So we can see, and this also gives us, once we have budget lines in, we have an estimation based on current depletion that the sum chart will reach refill zone in 5.7 days without irrigation. So it kind of gives you an idea. We're still working on this feature, but it gets closer and closer to accuracy as you actually get closer to the red line, which makes sense. If you're a long ways off, its estimations are not perfect. But you can see here, we've got the bottom covered. We never went drier than this. We never had any problems. Our foliage looks great in the field. We don't have to worry about it. What you can also do with this now, though, is you can start to work that red line down a little bit and keep trying to bump it. The real use of this is to see where your bottoms are going after you have it set. So we can kind of see we're gaining there. We're definitely gaining there. Starting to lose bottoms a little bit. Losing bottoms, back up, back up. Ideally, we'd like to kind of try to make all these bottoms just about hit the red line or hit the red line. And then if you feel like you could go off and do a manual soil probe and pull up the soil and squeeze it and it feels like it's still moist and good and everything's looking good, you can drop that red line a little bit slowly over time and then use less and less water and get to a point where you're comfortable, your plant's healthy, you've got as much oxygen in the soil as you can have. That can really improve the situation for your plants. The one thing that I'd like to talk about, though, real quick is saturation. If you're not starting out with a graph that looks like this where we can see really well what's going on, saturation is any time that a soil line goes up and it's still getting water but it flattens out. I'll show you an example of that. In this graph, we're seeing saturation. This makes it difficult to put budget lines in until things drain out. One of the things you may notice is there's not much going on here as far as with soil moisture depleting other than gravity. Those are slow angles down after the irrigation event. You'll notice in the irrigation event, the top level, the 4-inch depth, goes up and continues across flattened out at top and then drops with gravity. So that's telling us that moisture is still being added, but it can take no more, so it stays flat. And you can see that pretty much happens at the 8-inch depth as well, and maybe even more clear in the second irrigation. And the lower irrigations are not being affected much at all either, because they're pretty close to saturation already. So when you see this characteristic, you've got a lot of water in your soil and you're going to need to let it drain out before you can start working with budget lines. Okay, back to once we have budget lines and we know they're good using the previous technique, let's look at that from a map view. So in the map view, what you get is these markers that show you the last 3 days of soil moisture in a sum graph. So it's a quick way to look and say, hey, this one's getting close to the red, maybe I better take a look at it. This one looks good. We had obviously an irrigation there that's still hanging in the green area. Same here. We've irrigated out into the blue zone and it's still falling, but looks like we have a little time here. So that helps you decide, where you need to think about your next irrigation. If you have a bunch of fields with probes, it's a quick way to go through and decide who needs a closer look. Building budget lines is helpful to keep you on track all year long. You can tweak them as you see fit. If you ever see wilt going on, you could definitely put a red line there. And not that we want to get there, but that's going to be a good red line. And if you have perennial crops, that line can stay that way and you can trust it. When we're in row crops and reseeding every year and annuals, we have to replant the probe every year. So we'll have to remake those budget lines every year. That's it. Budget lines are easy. Go try it. Thanks for your time today.